Going on, guys? Keagan Stiefel here with Foxborough Rush. And hey, if you enjoy this episode, after you're done, go check out Boston Has Entered the Chat. Kasey Hudson and myself discuss all things Red Sox opening series down in Texas. Christian Campbell off to a blazing fast start, clearly ready for the major leagues. Rafael Devers, not so much. We get into all of that. We talk a little bit of women's college hoops, a little more Patriots if you didn't get your fix throughout this episode. So go check that out wherever you get your podcasts. Boston Has Entered the Chat. But now, let's get into Foxborough Rush. What up, what up? Keagan Stiefel, Kasey Hudson, the dynamic duo all of a sudden. 2 shows in one day. Ready to get after it. Case, how we doing?
I was going to say, is it lame to just jump in and go K squared, or are we not there yet?
I like it.
Okay.
I think it's a good... We'll start making graphics for social media. We'll get out there. I like that a lot.
Okay, we're good. So we're even better. K squared is at it. We, like you said, got to talk some Red Sox, got to already feel out some of the Patriots talk, but I'm excited that we get to branch into it even further because there were some press conferences that went down that you need multiple translators sometimes for some of these situations and NFL personalities. And you know what? I'm happy that New England got a personality. I always said that they didn't really have that name on the roster, but now they do. So a lot for us to get into.
Yeah, if we're looking for full segments for episodes, Stefon Diggs is going to be that guy for us this year, and we're starting right now. Stefon Diggs, he had his press conference on Friday. We didn't get to talk about it on chat, but we're going to talk about it here on Rush. Really just starting off with the reason why he decided to sign and his health coming into the Patriots. Let's get into that sound. We'll react right after.
I'm ahead of schedule. I'm trying to stay ahead of schedule. I've been pretty serious about, the grind process as far as that we're rehabbing and everything. So shout out to Dr. Reef. I'm ahead of schedule right now. I'm trying to stay there at this point, trying to work a little smarter. I'm a hard worker, so I try to put a lot on my plate at one time, but I'm trying to reel it back a little bit, just be a little more smarter. And what was your second question? Oh, I'm excited. I really look forward to it. It's crazy because when you ask around, he has a lot of similarities. Well, people say through the grapevine, he acts a lot like Josh, and that was my guy. So I look forward to meeting and connecting with him.
Kasey, what are your initial reactions to that? Because hearing a guy say, I'm a hard worker and I have to slow myself down coming off of an injury, probably a good thing because you often hear, guys coming off injuries, maybe they're a little timid getting back out on the field, but it sounds like he's ready to go.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like he's ready to go. I was trying to get past the visual of the polo that was just blending into the background there so beautifully. Diggs coming at us with fashion, but that is a good sign, especially because for anyone who is kind of sitting on the fence about this signing and about is he the correct veteran to have in this wide receiving room, I think that answers a number of questions for you. He's ahead of schedule, which is a good sign for one. For two, if you guys caught the previous, I think it was like 2 Foxborough Rushes ago, where we got a chance to talk to Texas reporter DJ. He was talking about the fact that training was going very well, and this is a Texans team that was kind of still keeping track on his progress just in case there was any sort of conversation or a deal to be made to keep him on that roster. So aside from there being a margin in conversation because of the number and where the Texans roster was going, they have been so complimentary to how well he has been recovering from this. So I think that this is all the things that you want to hear. The other thing that jumped out at me, though, Keagan, was Josh Allen's my guy. I feel like I was a big fan of that. Now he's going to be seeing Buffalo a lot more all over again. And of course, to a degree, there was a real genuine friendship going on there. You're not ever suited up alongside another guy with that much tension going on and it kind of overtake everything. Teams move in different directions. So I think overall it answers a number of questions for fans just heavily sitting on the fence about him.
Yeah, the Josh Allen's my guy is I'm sure it was a nice little bow for Buffalo fans where it was like, oh, they don't hate each other. They just they wore out their welcome together. They were able to move in a different direction. Yeah, they both wanted to win. They just didn't see it the same way, I guess. So I'm sure that was nice for Buffalo fans. For the injury aspect for me, we saw it last year with Kendrick Bourne where he missed a lot of training camp and it took him a minute to kind of get acclimated. He didn't really start looking like Kendrick Bourne until week 8, where he was in the game plan and he was making plays. So even if ahead of schedule for Diggs means week 4, he's the Stefon Diggs we expect him to be, I think that's a huge win, especially in a year where, if you looked at the specifics of his contract, he is very much on a year-to-year deal where the Patriots can get out of it at any time. So that will give him enough time to really showcase what he can do. And it also might be a good situation for the Patriots where they allow him the time to get used to the offense and the system. And then once he does, it's still not enough time for him to really explode and kind of price himself out of New England. So this might be a good deal for both sides. And obviously the Drake Maye stuff is very exciting. Just looking at young quarterback who needs a true number one wide receiver, a guy who went to Buffalo, who had a young quarterback and needed that true number one wide receiver. We've seen it work once before. Let's see if it'll work again. Stefon Diggs, he talked about it already. Drake Maye, his future with him and what he's looking like to work with him in the future.
Yeah, what I loved a lot about that as well, though, was the fact that there's a number of comparisons going across the board between Drake Maye and Josh Allen, or like younger Josh Allen, one would say. The powerful arm being one thing, but then also kind of, to some description-wise, call it the reckless playmaking, but to others, call it like that, necessary situational football playmaking ability. So we'll see how that develops, because there's a number of people that weren't sure if Maye was ready to evolve out of college and into the NFL at the time frame that he did. But the way that this team is being built around him, like, that just points out the fact that if Diggs can see any similarity between a quarterback who he did have a successful career with, he can continue to kind of build off of that aspect, or encourage it, motivate it, inspire it when it comes to a Drake Maye. It's not like he's coming in to coach the guy up. He's just coming in to build relationship and chemistry, because that's the strongest thing you need with a wide receiver if things are going to pop off between the both of you to help this team out at all.
Yeah, and we've seen from Maye, right? He has all the tools to be successful. It's, can he put them together on a consistent basis and also play within the system? And I think a guy like Diggs, if he can be there consistently, he can be a guy who gets open for him on third downs to keep the chains moving. That's really all you need. Diggs talked about it in his press conference on Friday. Let's listen to that.
Seeing that I got the experience, I've been doing this for 10 and a half years. Always at the half now, but I play with a lot of quarterbacks. I've been around a lot of quarterbacks, so learning the quarterback, getting to know him, spending more time with him. Once you know somebody on a more personal level, I feel like it's a lot of carryover to the field, whether they're risk takers or like to play aggressive, like to play smart, and just honing in on what he's good at. We played him last year. He shows a lot of fight. He got that fiery quarterback, I want to win mindset. So, that's something that I get excited about and love to be around. But as far as like his development as a quarterback, I feel like, that's not really too much of my job. My job is to get up and catch the ball. So I just look forward to getting back out there and, being one of the weapons for him.
I think that was an interesting end to that, where he was like, I just want to be there for him. I want to be one of his weapons. I want to be a part of the system. He didn't say it in those words, but being one of the weapons for him, one of multiple, being a part of the overall group, something maybe you wouldn't have expected to hear out of Stefon Diggs, where you would have thought maybe he would have said being the guy for him, because he has said, I'm that guy in the past. He said it after his press conference with Patriots social media. But just in terms of how he can help not only a young player and a guy who doesn't have a ton of experience in the league, but a young person and somebody who's still getting acclimated to the area, maybe they can kind of do that together. It's only been a year for Drake Maye. He has a lot of things in his life going on. He got engaged this offseason. Missed Mike Vrabel's press conference for it. People gave him some flack for that. But yeah, so just being able to experience something new with that wide receiver, like he said, off the field as much as on the field, I think it's going to be a good thing for both of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the point out of mentioning the fact that he just wants to be one of the weapons. But I think I don't want to say a play on words. I think it's Diggs playing his cards right. He doesn't come into this locker room expecting to be the guy. But if he is able to build that chemistry and that relationship with Maye, who's a little bit more on the reserve side, he doesn't come off as much of a loud guy, but the compete is very obvious. I think there's just going to be a natural bond between these two. Whereas, like, if this naturally grows, then Diggs knows that he's going to be that guy for him. So it doesn't have to be something that's spoken on. I think it's something that'll just develop on its own. And I think that he's already feeling that could be the case. Tracking back to the comparisons with Josh Allen, but moreover, just thinking about the fact that when you have a solo veteran to Diggs's caliber in this locker room, I think that Maye is going to kind of look to him a lot more, especially in crunch moments, because those are the key players that you feel like can get the job done. This also just translates into the fact that his better along in his recovery journey and not going to have to take so much time off the field before he becomes an impactful piece for Drake Maye specifically. So I think he's just timing it out nicely to where he's like, okay, we're going to build this correctly, because the other things that have been noted when it comes to Stefon Diggs is like his attitude and his passion. It's all a translation of his compete. He wants to win. And the fact that he even pointed out that Maye has that compete and that fury to him, I think naturally they're going to hit it off.
Yeah, and I think Josh Allen is a little more outwardly weird in the way that Drake Maye isn't. Like,
yeah,
he's louder, but he's also kind of goofy, and he can joke around with his teammates, but he can also get after him a little bit. I don't know if we saw that so much from Drake Maye, and was that because he was a rookie? Maybe, but I would like to see a little more of that come out. You know, the good old boy thing works for a while to really grab your teammates and kind of bring them in, but you have to keep them there. It's right. You grab their attention. Now you got to bring them in, and you have to be a leader. You have to be somebody that they not only, you know, respect as a football player, but they trust and they respect as a leader. So I think that's a big thing that Stefon Diggs can maybe bring out of him a little bit. If you have a guy who is loud with his personality, maybe it will bring that out of you. So I'm looking forward to seeing how they gel, you know, during training camp and during the early portion of the season, because I think there's going to be aspects of Stefon Diggs kind of pulling a little bit more out of Drake Maye. Like, give me a little more fieriness, give me a little more attitude, something that we can use on the field together in our development together.
Yeah, well, DJ Bieniemy said that he pulled that fire out of CJ Stroud. And, like, honestly, when you watch Stroud on the sidelines, you weren't seeing him really foaming at the mouth. I say foaming at the mouth because I love the drama. But you didn't see him get too, like, hot-headed. You didn't see too much of his passion kind of leading any situation. But there was this level of, like, compete that Stefon Diggs brought out of him, at least per, you know, the sources down there. So I actually think that that's a great point, because I feel like, if nothing else, this ended up being a really good fit for Diggs, because he is that rile you up on the sidelines, bring you into the fight kind of guy, and he's going to have an opportunity to be with another young quarterback. Doesn't really come off as very vocal, very loud, you know, not too... We know he's passionate, but we just haven't seen too much of it so far. So that's why I think, too, like, he's being really modest about just being one of his weapons, because I think the naturalization of all of it is like, I've got the experience, I can be your guy, just trust me to bring you into this. And I think that that's the relationship that's going to translate.
Yeah, maybe not so much forcing his way into it, but just knowing that it'll come with time and allowing that process to take over. And it will take time, right? We're not going to be able to see the Patriots out on the field for another 3.5, 4 months. But who you can see out on the field right now are the Boston Red Sox. And you can check out the entire Red Sox season with the NESN 360 annual plan, available at an all-new reduced price of just $20 a month if paid annually. And for a limited time, you can get 4 free tickets to Fenway with your purchase. Visit NESN360.com to sign up today. I think one of the big questions we all had coming into this was, why did he choose the Patriots? You know, he said he had multiple suitors. He only took the one visit to New England, but why the Patriots specifically? Diggs touched on Friday as well.
When I was factoring my decision, it's like getting back on track after I said I paid 10 and a half years playing this game. Would have been 11 if I didn't get banged up. So I definitely look forward to getting back on track. Young quarterback, a good team, a lot of pieces being added, everything trucking in the right direction, something that I wanted to be a part of. And I feel like I can be helpful as far as like development with the receivers and, you know, everybody involved. And for me personally, get back out there and get active. I just want to, you know, put my talents to use. But definitely, I thought about it. All that factored in going in and making my decision.
Yeah, he didn't so much say he needed to bring everybody along with him, but he said, I can. You know, I'm capable of doing that. Just by being Stefon Diggs, people are going to fall in line and follow him in the receiver room to be better, and also the quarterback with that trust and that relationship. What did you take away from that comment?
Oh, the thing that I hung on the most was him saying that he could be a part of the development of the wide receivers in that room. And yeah, that's part of the task, is coming in as a veteran. And of course, while he's still on his healing journey, then you're looking at the football IQ of a situation. And when you can be just as equally mentally prepared, then you're going to be just as effective on the field if the talent and skill set is already there. And we already know that about him. Because he's mentioned how he's been able to string together successful seasons, 1,000+ yard seasons, which is not easy to come by either. So knowing that the talent is already there, that mental, that football IQ, and what he can help players see. I mean, you're talking about a pretty stellar route runner. Imagine just how he can level up some of the other guys in this wide receiving room by helping them see things that they didn't naturally see. The fit of him being in McDaniel's system, that's something else that I find so appealing, because also how is he going to help translate McDaniel's system to some of these younger guys in the locker room, or especially if the Patriots end up going and drafting a wide receiver, how he can kind of help escalate that development and that impact. So I like that he pointed that out. Even though he's not going to come in and try to particularly put on the coach's hat, he has the capability, and it's something that he's been known to do.
Yeah, we talked about it on chat, but Stefon Diggs' versatility is a big part of his game, whether he's playing outside or in the slot. I think that's going to be really important, not only for him to find success early on in McDaniels' system, but also seeing where guys fall in line. The Patriots are going to want guys to be multiple and to play in a bunch of different spots, and whoever's able to do that early on with Diggs, I think is going to find themselves either in a better development situation or just a better situation initially to play more and get more targets. Jalen Polk is a guy we talked about where, he's versatile and he can play in the slot, but he didn't get that opportunity last year because the system they played in kind of called for people to place in specific roles, where Pop Douglas was their slot receiver and he stayed there, and Kayshon Boutte was on the outside and he stayed there, and it kind of pushed Polk into a role that he's not at his best. So if he's able to be multiple and to showcase skills in different roles, maybe that'll be better for his development. Maybe the same thing goes for Jah'Whaun Baker or Kayshon Boutte. Maybe we'll see him add a little wrinkle or two to his game. So I think it's better for the overall team to have versatile weapons. Whether or not they do remains to be seen, but we're going to find that out with Stefon Diggs, just the way he plays. And if they really do want to feature him, the role that he's going to be playing is going to force other guys to either adapt or get cut, get shipped out, and they'll find other guys to fill those roles.
Yeah, well, I think that that's the other thing, is that because of how he could help, quote unquote, with the development, he might bring a level of confidence and encouragement to them stepping outside of their comfort zone. If you were particularly a guy that felt more confident in the slot, maybe you'll be more open-minded to being productive in the wideout position, or vice versa. But that comes from somebody being able to translate the game to you in a digestible way, and that's something else. I mean, the guy knows a playbook, and he has such a vision out there. So I think the other question between him being able to help Polk develop, or maybe teach each other some things, is this jersey number situation. Do you think that it's I'll trade you secrets of how to become that much more potent on the field if you help with this number?
It's probably more of I'll trade you $100,000 is what I would imagine. Yeah, it's something that a rookie contract might not be able to buy you, but that's a good question, because he's coming into a situation where he's going to help Drake Maye get better, and the expectation is that he's going to help these receivers get better. And he talked about the reason why he ended up coming to New England, but one of the things he touched on too was Mike Vrabel and how much of a role that played into his decision, which I thought was super interesting.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I also kind of factor in he was a former player, and player to coach relationship, it kind of meshes really well with coaches that played at one time. They know what it takes to put the time in, being out there. They, I guess it wouldn't say it's too much like a robot. Sometimes they get caught up in being in the numbers and the X's and O's. And player coaches know that you out there, you can make plays. Things come up differently. You know what I'm saying? How you see things can be differently when you once were a player. So he was a big draw for me. Seeing that he played the game of football and how well he played the game of football. I mean, he played with a standard. He played with some moxie. He had that energy. He played with a team, or individuals that were, great at what they do. Being around greatness and breeding greatness. It's rubbing shoulders with it. I feel like it's a good relationship to have, especially when you're out there. So, trying to follow suit in a way.
Trying to follow suit, and then the path that Mike Vrabel has led. I think it's interesting that he mentioned the player coach thing, because he played for one technically in Minnesota, but it was a guy who had played like 30, 40 years before. You know
Right.
what I mean? And then he went to Buffalo, and Sean McDermott didn't play in the NFL, but he had such a long history of being a coach throughout the college ranks in the NFL. And then he got to Houston, and he got to play under DeMeco Ryans, who, he only retired in like 2012, whatever it was, just 10 years before. So he was able to really recognize what it was like playing for a former player and choosing his next spot. I think that played a huge role into it. Obviously, he said that, but you can see that having a little more freedom, a little more creative freedom was a big aspect in his decision.
Oh my gosh. Well, I love that he mentioned the players coach thing, because here's the first things that jump off the page for me. Players coaches just tend to have this immediate level of trust between a new team. And that's exactly what we're looking at. We're looking at Mike Vrabel piecing together a new team, but that understanding of him knowing what it's like to chase a championship, to acquire a championship, and like to go through all the grit and grind that it takes to be at the professional level, that level of trust is established. Outside of that, and this is nothing against great football minds, because a lot of them don't have an NFL background, or I don't want to say a lot, there's a percentage of them that don't have an NFL background, but it's those instinctual moments to make the right calls for every player on your team. And I think that's something else that just jumps off for a guy like Stefon Diggs, like that instinctual ability to make the right call. I kind of have been digging my heels into this. There were a number of play calling issues and questions around the Texans offense, and that's going to play into some frustrations and some temperamental issues. I think that there's going to be another level of confidence under Vrabel that he can make instinctual calls that'll be better for this offense as a whole, but also it's just going to translate better, because you're talking about a guy who also was very versatile in his time as an NFL player. He played on both sides of the ball. So he can speak to so many different levels of skill. He can speak to both the offensive players as well as the defensive players. So it just levels up the respect, but also just the trust, which means the buy-in is going to be so strong with this, I feel.
Yeah, Vrabel, he spent all of last year in Cleveland, and one of the things that he made sure to do was primarily spend time on the offensive side of the ball. And he said it's not so much that he didn't feel comfortable talking with the offensive players, but really getting to know them and seeing them on an everyday basis and building those relationships was important to him. And he worked with the offensive line, and he worked with the tight end, so he worked with the skill group. And I think that was probably huge for him in the X's and O's standpoint, to where if you have an issue between the offensive coordinator and the wide receiver, which every team has at some point, because the receiver's not getting the ball enough and the offensive coordinator's telling him, like, that's not what's best for us right now. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's a common issue in the NFL. I think being able to have that relationship with McDaniels, who obviously he played for, he worked, or he had a great relationship going back to when he first came to New England. McDaniels picked him up from the airport. Long history there. And then this relationship with Stefon Diggs, the player. Mike Vrabel has been known as a guy that guys love to play for. Derrick Henry was a huge proponent of. He didn't like that when the Titans got rid of him. He thought he should have stayed. You know, all those star players that went through Tennessee, the Jeffrey Simmons of the world, they loved playing for Mike Vrabel. So being able to have the relationship with the player, also the relationship with the coach, and kind of bridge that gap as a head coach, as a CEO type, which is what Mike Vrabel is. He's not going to be calling plays on either side. I think that's invaluable to a Stefon Diggs, a guy who, like we said, he can have his tiffs and his blow-ups on the sidelines, but at the end of the day, the player is the player, and he's very real. And the coaching, if you're able to kind of speak on a one-to-one level and say, this is what's best for everybody involved, and you can trust that as the player, I think it's a huge thing to have between the two sides.
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned the fact that like a guy like Vrabel wanted to get, it wasn't more of a comfort thing. It was just like understanding the routine and everything else on the offensive side. Like, to know that a coach is going to take the time to do something like that, it just speaks volumes. And it also stands by the character of how and who he claims to be. Relationship matters, connection matters. Like, he wants to know the player because he's going to be able to speak to them on a better level and than anything else, and then making it so transactional or so work related. It's like he's building a family here. And then something else that was a part of Stefon Diggs' press conference that I actually kind of enjoyed as well was that he mentioned the fact that the wide receiving coach, Todd Downing, I think he was over at the Pro Bowl and stuff. So some of these relationships in terms of like, do we mesh? Do we vibe? I feel like that started early, which kind of also made it almost a hands down thing for him to say, like, New England feels like a good start, because there was concern like, hey, you're coming back from injury, you're 31 years old. It's not just can you make an impact, but how fast are you trying to chase a ring over here? Are you going to have the patience in correlation with your passion and your compete? But he seems to already gravitate to this staff, trust this staff, and believe in them. And starting with the wide receiving coach to McDaniels all the way up to Vrabel, like that's a good chain reaction to have for somebody who's ready to come in and make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Vrabel talked about when they had that big wave of signings early on, Milton Williams and Morgan Moses and Robert Spillane, all those guys. He said, I don't know how to do free agency any other way than knowing the players, having, a relationship with them, either previously myself or my staff having already had a relationship with them. And Stefon Diggs is another one of those guys. He played on a staff that had Todd Downing in Minnesota. Downing was the tight ends coach early in Diggs' career in Minnesota. And then last year, Ben McDaniels, the brother of Josh McDaniels, was the passing game coordinator in Houston. So two guys who know Diggs well. They know him from early in his career and the most recent stop. One of them is on the staff. One of them is the brother of the guy who's going to be calling plays this year. I think that's such a huge thing to where we've spoken about, I think, since the day he signed, where Stefon Diggs is not like a bad guy. Mm-hmm. He's not going and doing things off the field that are affecting the team. He's just so passionate that maybe he gets in his own way sometimes, where the blow-ups on the sidelines, they just don't fly after a certain point. If you know the guy, you're able to differentiate between what we see on TV when he's yelling at Josh Allen versus what everybody kind of knows him as a player and a coach, as that relationship to be, which is he's just passionate. And we love the guy. He just kind of wore out his welcome in Buffalo. He was no longer a fit for what they needed. And then he went to Houston, and he was beloved there, and he was beloved in Minnesota. So having that relationship is such a big thing that maybe we overlooked coming into free agency, but we sure as hell aren't going to overlook moving forward because, Vrabel said it himself, and we've seen the proof is in the pudding with who they've signed, who they've felt comfortable giving money to this offseason are guys that they know on a personal level, not just the player.
Yeah, and then that just tracks back to why it's important or why some players prefer playing for a former player, a player's coach, because then there's a level of protection there. Like you said, they're not going to mistranslate his passion. They're not going to throw him to the wolves, and they're not going to buy into sort of a clickbait or headline that says it makes him look problematic. Like you've seen Vrabel protect players before, and I know a number of players, coaches out there that's like, I'm not going to throw my guy under. His health, his mental health, and keeping him focused and reeling him in when he kind of gets in his own way a little bit is more important than buying into any sort of headline that's going to take off and just cause more issues than need be. So that's probably another reason why he's a big fan of that. He's going to be protected.
Absolutely. Hey guys, if you're enjoying the show, check out Nesson's Daily Sports Podcast. Boston has entered the chat. We talk about all things trending sports in Boston and around the country. It's available on Amazon, Apple, Spotify, Twitch, YouTube, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Boston has entered the chat. Yeah, and, relationship for Diggs, right, with the head coach and Mike Vrabel, with the offensive coordinator and Josh McDaniels through Ben McDaniels. Talked about Drake Maye, and we just touched on it a little bit earlier, but I want to dive a little bit more into it. The Jalen Polk aspect. We saw it on Instagram. Diggs was asking, what number should I wear? We're going to get more into this later because there are none available. It's kind of ridiculous how little options he has. But somebody said number 1. You wore that last year in Houston. He said, I'm going to read it normally. We don't do that. We have a young boy. He's about to have a good year. Believe in him. Talking about Jalen Polk. I think that's a huge vote of confidence for a guy who had a rough rookie season last year.
I was anticipating you to read it verbatim.
No.
No. You open it up and you're like,
respectfully,
no. Translation.
Not going to do that. Yeah.
Well, either way.
I know who I am.
I wouldn't even attempt it because a lot of it is just, it's too much. It's a song that I don't want to sing. So thank you for putting that in layman's terms. But yeah, I mean, look, I think this also testifies to the fact that he's not coming in to try to take over by any means, because we've seen a number of guys that are attached to a number, or even if there's a sentiment behind it or not, it's his number, it's his reputation, it's what he's been known to dominate in. And this is where, humorously enough, we circle back to what would it cost you as a rookie? What would your price be to swap numbers? And you hear of guys giving them Rolexes or, kind of putting money towards their new car, like that big rookie purchase. So I like the fact that this just continues to back up. Diggs is not here to disrupt the peace. He's here to just kind of not fall in line because there's a different expectation upon his shoulders. But I know it's going to be weird to see him in anything other than 1. But you said it, like, what's left? What number can he wear that would make sense or even like look good out there?
I pulled him up. So he's worn 14 in the past. That's currently being occupied by Robert Spillane, who just chose it. So there might be
a
able
little
to
bit
work,
of a conversation
work that through.
there. Okay.
Yeah. So the current numbers that are available: 8 because Jah'Whaun Bentley just got cut. I'm scrolling.
I'm scrolling.
18, 80, and 89. There is one
80 in a
decent wide
Patriots
receiver
jersey.
number. Yeah, like Danny Amendola wore it and was really good wearing that number. It's not a bad number, but another Instagram post by Stefon Diggs, he said, I don't really jive with the 80s numbers. They're not for me. I'm a single or a in the teens guy. So his options are 8 or 18, essentially.
But 8
I
just
would
looks
imagine,
so gross.
I
Not
agree.
to be such a
It
chick
looks,
about it, but
not to, like, big fan of Jah'Whaun Bentley. I think he looked great in number 8 because he was like a thick, like a big dude. So it spreads out. It makes sense.
It almost looks like 2 numbers.
Guy, yeah. With a little guy like Stefon Diggs, there needs to be a 1 in there, which I agree with, like he said. And who can he trade with on this team? Gonzalez has given up 0. He said no to 1. Harold Landry just picked number 2. Demario Douglas has 3, Gibson 4, Jabril Peppers 5, Javon Baker in 6. If he doesn't want to take 1 from Jalen Polk, I don't see why he would want to take 1 from Baker. Carlton Davis took 7. Kayshon Boutte in 9. He wore 80 before 9, so maybe he'll move back to 80 if that number's on the table, I guess. Number 12 isn't available. The number I thought I would go with, number 11. So Josh Dobbs picked it. He's the 3rd string quarterback. 11 is a classic Patriots number. Drew Bledsoe wore it. Julian Edelman wore it. I think it would fit on Stefon Diggs. I think Josh Dobbs is the 3rd string quarterback. He's a veteran. You will be in whatever number we put you in. If I'm the Patriots, like, you don't get to pick. And maybe Stefon Diggs will. Yeah, and so Josh Dobbs, he just got engaged to his longtime girlfriend. Maybe Stefon Diggs will get them a nice wedding present for the trade for number 11. That's what I've settled on. I think 11 is the right number for Stefon Diggs.
I like that. I can roll with that pick because the 8 and the 18 for some reason just it doesn't fit for me whatsoever. Like even 14 was kind of like but like 8 it takes you need a bigger body for 8. You got to take up a lot more room.
Got to be a big boy.
Yeah, frame wise, to make that make sense for me. Is somebody wearing 15? I don't remember if he said.
Marte Mapu wears 15.
Okay. So yeah, 15's out.
A guy who, if you have no idea who that is, it makes sense because he's not like a superstar. So another guy who
negotiable
previously wore a different number, he changed to 15, so that might be negotiable. Maybe. What's the choice on 15? Do you just like that one better?
Yeah, it was actually kind of like a reserve soccer number, so I was like, it's okay. But I'm probably going against myself by being like 8 looks a little too big, but 15's kind of in the same category. Like you won with 11, and I think that a nice
I like 11.
Wedding gift. I mean, nothing against 3rd string quarterback, but like you're not gonna. He's got a lot more to do. Like that number is going to be more visible on his back, unfortunately. And like if it were me in the 3rd string quarterback position, I would just be like here. Unless it he has like serious sentiment. Exactly.
Yeah, it's like where you're covering up 11. Give it to Stefon Diggs. He'll be out in the open. Everybody will see it on every game day. So I think we decided. Casey and Keegan approved.
Number. K-squared figured 11. It out.
That's right. That's why they put us together, because we get down to business and we make decisions. So Stefon Diggs, you're a number 11, buddy. It's no longer your choice. We made the decision for you.
Congratulations. And then I heard that he's big on fashion, so just imagine how much better he's going to make that 11 look when it comes to off the field as well as on the field. One would hope. That striped polo is still kind of tossing me, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. You know, I'm gonna throw us under the bus. We talked about it before the show. The black loafers with the jeans and the polo it's a bad look.
Cut it out.
Can't do it.
I hate to be that person who uses the word cringe too much, but it's cringy. Yeah. You could do so much better, Diggs. You could do so much better. And mind you, loafers are not going to last here in New England. I have learned that, not as loafer wear by any means, but your fashion is going to have to take a whole different turn.
Leather in general is just not built for New England. There's salt in the roads. It's going to eat through the leather. It's going to ruin the shoes. You can't do it. But
I didn't even think about that.
beyond the fashion, having Jalen Polk here in number one, which he won't take, Stefon Diggs won't take it. We already heard that. I think this is a good relationship to have, because Polk clearly had a mental hurdle that he needed to get over last year, and he never quite could. We saw glimpses of a good wide receiver. You know, he scored a couple touchdowns. He had a great grab in the back of the end zone against Miami. They reversed it off of a weird technicality. Like, he got his toe down and then the heel came down. But since the toe was still down, it was incomplete. It was a mess. But that really started a downhill spiral for Jalen Polk. And I think having Stefon Diggs in the room this year with him, there's no lack of confidence in Stefon Diggs. And being able to kind of give a little bit of that to a young wide receiver, I think could be good for the Patriots.
Well, for sure, because you're talking about a young guy coming in and trying to find his stride at the professional level. Then you've got this turnover in the quarterback room, because Maye didn't start off the season with this team. There were some glimmers in the preseason that I thought were kind of like making a case on behalf of Maye having a role earlier on, but you start off with a different kind of quarterback. We know some of the miscues and mishaps that can take place with the guy who was in before Maye. Who was it, Brissett? Am I getting that right?
Brissett, yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't want to butcher his name. But, you know, we know that his style for veteran wide receivers can be a bit complex. So you have a young guy coming into this, then you get Maye the toss. Well, Maye is trying to get situated behind a very fractured offensive line. So there just wasn't enough stability, in my personal opinion, for Polk to have the mental toughness, the safe space to start completely piecing together his game. So I think that's more so why we probably saw some spotty performances, because there were some games where the Patriots made it a little bit more interesting. I say that mildly, but you can't come in as a young guy learning a new system. The pace completely accelerates because you're in the professionals now versus college, and then you got a young quarterback trying to figure out his footing at the same time. There was just too many moving pieces. So at least that's what I'm going to rest on when it comes to Polk, and like then insert Stefon Diggs, who can teach him a lot, who can bring a level of confidence to him. He can turn to him and ask questions versus having to look to Maye or anyone else in that wide receiving room. And I think that's going to be more beneficial than we're going to know until we see it.
Yeah, Polk also had two goofball wide receiver coaches, respectfully. So maybe just having an adult in the room will
it
help
felt like he didn't have
year.
anybody to go to really ask. Like, imagine if you have like serious key questions and you need it broken down a particular way. Did you feel like there was anybody who could really talk him through it?
Right, yeah. So it was definitely a problem. And not only will Todd Downing be there, have some questions about him, but Diggs said he'll be there. He also talked about that on Friday.
It's more so experience from the highs and the lows, I would say, because everybody want to have success in this league. Everybody wants to play at a very high level, but I feel like I can help more so with the lows just because I've experienced them myself on a personal level. Like the first 3 games of my career, I wasn't playing at all. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't until the 4th game when I got my opportunity, and then taking advantage of opportunities and learning that, you know, sometimes the timing is off. When it's your time to shine, shine. And if you don't, you can't blame nobody but yourself. But I kind of learned that the hard way. Like sitting on the bench for 3 games my rookie season, it was kind of rough for me as far as mentally. Like, damn, I felt like I had a good camp. I felt like I did what I could have to have like some kind of role. Not to say what it was, but to help them with the lows is the biggest thing, because everything isn't going to go your way. Sometimes you got to learn that the hard way. But if you're doing what you're supposed to, you're committed to it, it'll bounce away. The ball will bounce your way eventually. You just never know when. So that's something that I learned when I was younger. Like I told myself that when I did get the opportunity to go in between the lines, I wasn't going to come off them, because I'm going to do my job. I'm going to be where I'm supposed to be, and I'm going to make plays, because it's not all about the X's and O's, but you got to go out there and make plays, play ball, and be a professional. I think being a pro is pro, you'll learn a lot too. And I feel like I've been a pro my whole life, especially when I got in the league. But with the young guys, bringing them along to show them how to be a professional and how to handle business each and every day, it'll go a long way.
Yeah, I mean, he said it all there. And we touched on it before we threw to it, but just having a guy who's done it before and who needed to work his way into a certain system at the beginning of his career, I think can go a long way for Polk and Baker, Booty, the rest of those guys.
Yeah, well, the other thing that I love that he mentioned, like you said, we've kind of already touched on this, but he said he can pull him through the lows. So the other mental aspect that I'm thinking of from Polk's perspective is that, say you're kind of sold in on the fact that, like, okay, Drake Maye's young. They had some young guys on the offensive line. A lot of this team is young, so why not have the room to kind of like have more reps, to be trusted to do more? And then sometimes those opportunities are taken away from you, and there might not be much reasoning behind it, because again, this team was trying to figure out a lot of different things, and I don't think Polk was a priority in some of these conversations. So having a guy that knows what that low feels like, to pull yourself out, to not be disappointed with expectations or kind of preserve your expectations, that's going to help get him in the perfect mind frame heading into this upcoming season. But he's also going to be encouraging, because he said once he gets between the lines, like, it's hard to take him out. So he's already encouraging him to like go for broke, to earn that time, to show them why they can't ignore you or limit your reps, or, you know, put you in any sort of position where you can't go out there and make noise. So I love that he pointed out the fact that he can pull him out of the low, because I don't think it's just going to be a conversation. I think it's going to be like, hey, this is how you can make them want you on the field more or put you in these positions.
Yeah, and Diggs, they're going to work him in pretty slowly throughout training camp, so there should be plenty of opportunities for these young guys, like we mentioned earlier, the Polks, the Bakers, the Booties, the Douglases of the world, to show that they should be a part of this team and they should have a role in this offense moving forward. If you're enjoying this episode of Foxborough Rush, make sure to check us out every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. You can find us on Amazon, Apple, Spotify, Twitch, and YouTube with NFL draft experts like ESPN's Matt Miller, NFL.com's Eric Edholm. Learn all about the latest news surrounding the Patriots as we work throughout the offseason. Again, available on Amazon, Apple, Spotify, Twitch, YouTube, and wherever else you get your podcasts. We had our fun early in the show, but now we have to shout out to a real one. Jah'Whaun Bentley, gone from the roster, but forever in our hearts. The Patriots cut him this week. We didn't get a chance to talk about it on Friday for our show, but over the weekend, he's gone. A three-time team captain, a guy who won a Super Bowl, one of our last Super Bowl winners here in New England. What did you think about the move? Obviously, a big change on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, definitely a big change, but it seems like this team is moving on from some of their leaders and, you know, some of the guys who have been a part of significant eras of this team. But you can't particularly rebuild or kind of entirely implement a new culture with some of the previous guys. And I know this was kind of the conversation when they moved on from Andrews, and that was kind of unexpected, but it just seems to be the theme. If they're going to commit on one side of the ball to start establishing new leaders, they're going to have to do that on the other side. Some of these signings, defense has gotten stronger, defense has gotten younger, but you have to be able to trust some of these younger guys to find their voice. And it looks like they're encouraging them to find it earlier rather than later. So definitely tough to move past a guy after 7 seasons. And like you said, he's been in a captain role, he's been in that leadership role, but I think it just fits the theme of what we've seen taking place over the past 6 to 8 weeks in terms of like who they're bringing in and who they're moving on from.
Yeah, 4-time team captain. I didn't want to shortchange him there, but this is something I touched on a couple weeks ago with the Andrews release. I was on with George, and I kind of said it's not a matter of whether they were good leaders. It's a matter of this is now the 3rd regime that they would be a part of. And just changing the message from Belichick to Mayo to Vrabel are 3 very different messages, 3 very different systems, different ways of relaying what you're going to be relaying. And I think it's a difficult position to put these guys in, to where not only are you going to have to adapt like everybody else, but you're also going to have to bring people along with you. That's a difficult task. So from the leadership aspect, it's not cutting away bad leaders. It's cutting away good leaders who no longer fit what you're looking for. And I think that's an unfortunate reality, but it's a reality we see a lot of the times, you know, across the league. Seattle, when they went through their big change, Bobby Wagner got cut. And that's the best linebacker we've seen in the last 25 years, got cut from the team he became famous on because he no longer fit the message. And it was no longer what they were trying to relay. And he's still been good. He went to Washington, had a great year. I think he's back in Seattle. He's somewhere now. So teams do things like this all the time. And again, it's not a matter of whether you were good at what you did. We don't need you to do it anymore. And you're no longer fit what we're looking for. So they signed all these linebackers. I think now is the time to cut him because you're looking to get faster and younger and more athletic on the defense. And for as good as Jah'Whaun Bentley was, and for as as much as he changed and developed into what they needed him to be, he kind of ran out of rope. He's coming off of an injury. Athletically, he can only get so good. He's only who he is already. He's 27, 28 years old. He's not going to get any better athletically. They brought in so many guys, Robert Spillane, Jack Gibbons. They brought back Christian Ellis, so they have guys on the second level of the defense. It stinks. It's a really hard pill to swallow if you're a Patriots fan or if you're somebody who was around Jah'Whaun Bentley like I was. I really respected him. He was the first one to step up in front of people and answer questions. Always gracious with stuff like that. Same thing went for David Andrews, Jonathan Jones, Dietrich Wise. You just don't fit anymore. You move on just like the team moves on. You wish them nothing but the best. Sometimes that's just the way the cookie crumbles in the NFL.
Yeah, well, you made a number of really good points there to say that it's not their leadership, but it could be the style and can they translate in the style. The last thing you want to do is have a veteran on your roster with the expectation that they can help this team step into a new era and then they're struggling to adjust as well. So now where you were expecting somebody to kind of help guide the younger guys and voices and tendencies forward, you're now kind of stuck trying to help them go through a changing period as well. And I think that speaks to the fact that this team hasn't particularly come out and said, hey, we can make it to the postseason in actually 1 to 2 years versus 3 to 5 years. But some of these changes they're making tells you, like, we're not waiting for that 3-year mark. We're actually just going to go ahead and start redesigning this culture and having the buy-in start from the go and go happen the minute that Vrabel signed on. So it is tough to move past particular leaders like this, that's for sure. But then also on the scope of what he was contributing, I mean, roughly a little over a half of sack. You need a backbreaker when it comes to linebackers. And then considering the AFC division, like, if you don't have a hunter out there for your linebacker who's really getting the job done every single time, you're going against teams like the Bills, like, you're gonna have to make tough decisions. So it's not to speak to what he's meant to this locker room, but it's meant to speak to like where this league is going. More specifically where this division is going, and if they want to have the ability to leap over a Miami Dolphins team that could be a bit fractured heading into next season, that could be an advantage point. The Jets, we don't really know what this team is going to look like. So realistically, if the Patriots play their cards right heading into this upcoming season, they can position themselves to just their biggest competition being the Bills. And defense has to be able to lock things down. There's just too many games where it was just a rollover because every player on the defense was just not fulfilling their role. And linebacker is one of those tone-setting roles. I could be biased. It was my first favorite position when I got into football as a kid. I mean, I grew up around the John Lynch era, and he was on my team. But, like, a linebacker is a tone-setter. When the Bucs won the Super Bowl, it was Devin White. Like, you have to have this unhinged, foaming-at-the-mouth kind of guy back there. And that's kind of where you got to get younger sometimes.
Yeah, I think a lot of people ask the question, why Jah'Whaun Bentley and not Jahlani Tavai? And I think beyond the fact that Jahlani Tavai had maybe the worst year of his career, definitely the worst year of his career in New England, he was bad last year. But he was also playing out of position where he was really good on the edge, not in a pass rushing role like a lot of people would expect, but setting the edge and kind of funneling everything back up the middle, which is what the Patriots have often asked those edge setters to do. He was really good. And, he's younger, he's more athletic. I think he fits more, he's more multiple, more versatile than Jah'Whaun Bentley was. So despite seeing him more recently have a bad season, he's not a worse player, and he's definitely not a worse fit than Jah'Whaun Bentley was in this new system. The Patriots are going to ask their linebackers to essentially clean up the trash because their defensive linemen are going to be allowed to go crazy up front. Get after the quarterback in any way possible, get after the running back in any way possible. So you need athletic linebackers on the second level to make plays surrounding those guys. Who they brought in, Gibbons and Spillane and Ellis obviously back, they fit that a little bit more than Bentley does. Bentley is going to find a role somewhere else. I don't have a team at the top of mind, but just think a classic 3-4 defense kind of guy where he could play alongside somebody else and have a defense that funnels things to the middle. He can clean them back up. I think that's where he'll be going. We're going to wrap this one up for now. I've been Keagan Stiefel. She has been Kasey Hudson. K squared. Trademark that at some point moving forward. Hopefully we'll be back together soon on one of these shows. But for wherever you get your podcasts, Amazon, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, this has been Foxborough Rush, and we will catch you next time.